So let's get started here. Preparing a presentation, part 3, Thesis Trees and how to write about anything. Whether you are a business person creating a presentation for a big project, whether you're an entrepreneur, kind of scheduling your speaking points for a video to record, or you're a student in college trying to write a presentation, then this presentation is going to help you. And before watching this video, hopefully you saw part 1, which was about organizational strategies, the information arrangement strategies, and part 2 on Thesis Trees and how to write an outline. So those two, really you needed to have watched those before watching this one, because in those two videos we talked about Rowdy the Rat, and I told you the story of Rowdy the Rat, and that's what we're basing everything on here. So by the end of this video, you'll be able to brainstorm on anything using that Thesis Tree system that I showed you with Rowdy the Rat, and I showed you how you'll be able to make some sentences using that Thesis Tree. Well, this is gonna take the Thesis Tree to a new level for you. This, you'll be able to brainstorm on anything, and this is really going to help whether you know what you're talking about and you're scheduling your speaking points for a presentation, or you don't know what you're talking about and you have to write an essay in college. Either way, this is really going to help you here. So Rowdy the Rat story focused on a couple of different main items. We talked about research and the researcher. We talked about celebrities and their involvement in this and getting behind the cause of helping these children. We talked about the hotel and the fact that they did crazy publicity stunts. We talked about the media and their relationship with the hotel, that they couldn't come in, but they could only come in for this one day if they were going to record the race or report on the race. And then we talked about the animal race itself. All right, now what I want to do here to help you understand how this is all going to come together to be able to write a speech off of a thesis tree is, first we want to take all those information arrangement strategies that we talked about in that first video and apply them to the story of Rowdy the Rat that we got in the second video. Okay, so let's do that with this. Now when you think about the story of Rowdy the Rat that I told you, how did I tell it? I told it from the beginning to the end in time, right? That was chronological, and we know chronological worked well. We know chronological worked well. Okay, now what about topical? Well, that's if you took all these topics up here and you arranged them in just a random order, which this seems to be a little bit random. It's both chronological and topical, isn't it? But topical works well because you could rearrange any of these and still have all these as your talking points, and it would work well in a presentation. Okay, now what about order of? Remember, order of importance is pretty subjective depending on your topic. Well, look at these subpoints here: research, celebrities, hotel, media, race. Which one of those is most important? Now, most of you will say the research and the researcher, because without them, nothing else would have happened, right? And if we all agree on that, that's great. But then what about what comes next? What is the next most important thing here? Is it the celebrities? Because without the celebrity endorsement, they wouldn't have gotten the word out. Is it the hotel? Because without the hotel, they wouldn't have done the publicity stunt and had the celebrities. Is it the media? Because without the media coverage, that wouldn't have happened and the children wouldn't have benefited from it. Is it the race? Because without that race, they'd have had to have found some other publicity stunt, some other way to get the word out. It's really subjective on what you would choose next, isn't it? It really is. So maybe order of is not the best solution. Maybe the order of is not the best solution for this. Okay, well, what about cause and effect now? Think about cause and effect. What of these main points across the top here would cause another main point? Well, the research being done was cause for needing to get the word out, right? The results of the research was a cause of getting the results out. All right, so there we have a cause and an effect. Celebrities endorsing this was the cause of helping the children, or celebrities endorsing this maybe was the cause of getting the media really involved, wouldn't you say? We have another cause and effect. And then definitely getting the celebrities to endorse it helped the children. Getting the hotel and the race coordinated led to publicity. So there are a couple of different ways you could do another cause and effect here. There we have another cause and effect. So does this work? Yes. We have main points available to us here if you look at this cause and effect as one main point. So in that other video I showed you how to write your sentences, this is how you would structure your sentences, with the first part of the sentence being the cause and the second part of the sentence being the effect, obviously. And then within that subpoint, you know how we had those little minor subpoints that dropped down below before? This time we have A and B as subpoints, cause and effect as subpoints, cause and effect as subpoints. So we have our three main points and we have our subpoints all laid out for us, and it does work. It does work, but is it the best? Not really. That squiggly line is my not so much. Not the best solution, perhaps. Now it could work. It could work. I just showed you it could work, but it maybe isn't the best solution for this information. What about pro-con? Now remember, pro-con is where you look at all the good stuff and all the bad stuff. Are there any benefits that could be seen from the story? Yeah, absolutely. Lots of benefits. The fact that this research could help children, huge benefit. Celebrity endorsement, huge benefit. Hotel benefited from the publicity. The media got to come inside the hotel for a day. The race was pretty beneficial to getting the word out. Pretty useful in getting the word out, I should say. So there are a lot of pros to this. Were there any cons? Well, the cockroach had a really bad day when the bullfrog ate him, right? The hotel had some wallpaper damage because of the goat. Maybe the ferret got a headache when he head-butted the wall. So maybe there were some bad things that happened, but were there as many good things as there were bad things? Probably more good than bad, right? Is there any rule that says you can't have more good things listed than bad things? No, no rule. So could pro-con work with three main points? Sure. We have maybe two pros and one con. So it could work. Is it the best solution? Not really. Not really the best solution. But it could work. Now, I'm going to skip compare and contrast and keep it until the end. Let's talk about spatial arrangement here. How would you arrange these things spatially? When you consider the 5 main points across the top here, how would you arrange them spatially? Some of you might say, well, the research happened first. If that's what you're thinking, then you're wrong in thinking of it spatially. That's not spatial arrangement. That's chronological. What happened first, what happened next, that's chronological arrangement. That's not spatial. Remember, spatial is arrangement according to space from one end to the other, not time. Not time. So how would we arrange these spatially? Well, it's kind of odd, but you would have to think geographically. So let's pretend this is London. This big circle is London, and the line going through it is a north to south line straight through the middle of London. And let's pretend like the research laboratory is 15 kilometers to the west of the center of London. And then let's pretend like the main celebrity's house, who endorsed this, is 5 kilometers to the west of the center of London. And then the hotel is 8 kilometers to the east of the center of London. And then the main media station who broadcast this was 21 kilometers to the east of the center of London. Remember, they use kilometers in London because they're on the metric system. Okay, so what you would have to do for a spatial arrangement is to go from maybe west to east, or east to west, or south to north, or north to south. It would be from one end to the other in space. Now, could you do that with this information? Yes, technically you could. Is it weird? Yes. Don't do that. It's crazy. That would drive your audience nuts. They'd be like, what is he talking about? So this could work in some things. Like I said in the other video, the Galapagos Islands, going from the creatures of the sea to the creatures of the land to the creatures of the air, worked really well. Spatial arrangement can work great for some things, but for a lot of things, it does not work well. And this is one of them. So we're not going to use spatial arrangement. Now, how would we use compare and contrast for this? Now, remember, compare and contrast is looking at similarities and differences. So look at these 5 main points across the top. What's similar between them? It's kind of odd to think about, right? What is different between them? Everything. Okay, but what are the similarities? That's really odd to think about. There are lots of differences. Okay, never rule out compare contrast. Never. It is one of the strongest information arrangement strategies. It is one of the strongest information arrangement strategies you have at your fingertips. And here's why. The beauty of this one is that you get to bring things in from outside the story. That's the beauty of this. You can bring things in from outside the story. So it really helps you when you're trying to beef up a presentation. You ever been in college and you're writing a paper and you just don't have enough information even after doing your research? Here's how to fix that problem. Here's your pro tip. Take, for instance, the research. Okay, think about the research here for a second. Could you compare this behavioral modification and physical therapy research with other similar types of research? Absolutely, yes. Think about what you just did. You just doubled the amount of information in one of your subpoints here. You just doubled it. But if you do a little bit of research, you can find other similar types of research. And you just doubled the information in that one subpoint alone. Now, the key here is that you have to add value. Think about the celebrities. Okay? Could we compare the celebrity endorsements for this event versus celebrity endorsements of other similar events? Absolutely. Absolutely we can. And the real key here is the value we can get from that. Now think about this. If we, even before this event started, and if you're thinking about doing an event like this to get publicity, for instance, then just on the hypothetical situation that you might get celebrity endorsement for this, could you consider, just hypothetically, could you consider the real endorsements that celebrities have given to other similar causes, and then estimate or guesstimate the effects that those endorsements might have on this cause? Yes, absolutely. Yes, that gives you value. Thinking about that kind of a comparison gives you value. Plus, it doubles the amount of information you have within a subpoint that you could talk about. Could you think about, could you compare this hotel and the crazy publicity stunts that this hotel does versus other hotels or other businesses in general that do crazy publicity stunts? Yes. Could you compare the media coverage of this event versus the media coverage of other similar events? Absolutely. That would give us tons of value that we could talk about there. And you just doubled the amount of information again. Could you compare this animal race versus other animal races? Yes, you could. So you just doubled the information in every single one of these subpoints. You just massively increased the scope of this and how much information you could pull in and actual value that you could add to your presentation. Don't just add fluff. Don't just add stuff to add stuff. Think about the value that this contributes when you make an intelligent contribution to what you're doing here. Whether you're estimating the celebrity endorsements for this based on celebrity endorsements that have happened in the past for similar issues, or you're thinking about the media coverage of this event versus media coverage of other events and how that might benefit you. This is how you create a plan for things. You have to do some value comparisons here. So does compare contrast work? Yes. It absolutely works. Absolutely. All the time, because you get to pull in stuff from out of the story. And so that's one of the strongest ones you have at your disposal. Now, some of you are wondering why I have an ice cream sundae here. Because I want to give you one more example of how we can actually apply these information arrangement strategies to another topic. Okay? And if you really want the lowdown, the skinny, the good stuff on this ice cream sundae example here, then in one of my workshops, the public speaking workshops on informative speeches, in the section on informative speeches, then I actually have a whole speech written out about building an ice cream sundae. And I know that might sound simplistic, it might sound a little bit crazy and off topic here, but it really does help you see how you can put all this stuff together. And in that speech, there are some extra elements in there that I don't talk about in any of my videos. So go to Communicate with Command if you're interested. Sign up for that workshop. Learn about the informative speeches. And you actually get this speech in that course. Okay? But I want to talk about how we can apply these information arrangement strategies to building an ice cream sundae. Because it's a really simple example. And it helps you see that you can apply this to anything. All right, so let's do this. And for our three main points, we're going to talk about the base, which is the type of bottom that you want, whether you want it in a cup or a bowl, whether you want a waffle cone, a sugar cone, or whatever, and the ice cream that goes with it. We're going to consider the ice cream in the waffle cone the base. Okay, so we're not going to talk about the flavors of the ice cream necessarily here. And then the middle layer, the sauce, is next. Okay, that's our second main point. And then our third main point is going to be all about the tasty toppings. You like that alliteration, tasty toppings? Okay, so let's use these arrangement strategies and look at these three main points. Really simply, how do you know how this is arranged? Well, think about this. If you were to describe building an ice cream sundae in that order, if you simply said, first we're going to build the base, secondly we're going to put on the sauce, finally we're going to add the tasty toppings, you just described it chronologically, didn't you? You just did, because you did it in the order that you're going to do them. Okay, look at that arrow. That arrow goes from the bottom to the top. Isn't that spatial arrangement as well? Yes, it is. So what's the difference? What's the difference there? The difference is in your wording in your presentation, in your speech. In your speech itself, the words that you use make the difference. So in that way that I just said it, first we do the base, secondly we do the sauce, finally we do the tasty toppings. That's chronological. But if throughout the speech, throughout the presentation, we used words that indicated motion, that indicated moving from the bottom to the top, now that we've established our base, let's move up to the special sauce. That indicates movement. Now that we've added our sauce, let's move up to the top to add our tasty toppings. That indicates distance, that indicates space, that indicates a movement from bottom to top. That would be spatial arrangement. So really, it's all about the wording that you use that would define it either as spatial or chronological arrangement. Okay? And that's how you decide. Spatial works because you're talking about going from the bottom to the top. Chronological works because that's how you build one. Usually, I don't know, maybe some of you are really weird and you like to put the tasty toppings on the bottom of the ice cream. I don't know. But that's typically how you build an ice cream sundae, from the bottom up. And topical could work because topical, remember, is when you do these randomly. So if you first talked about the tasty toppings, and then you talked about the base, and then you talked about the sauce, just randomly choosing those three regardless of the order that you actually perform those in, to put that together, then that would be topical arrangement. And topical would work. It's just a random arrangement. It isn't that interesting for an audience to hear, though, honestly. Go with something like spatial, and it gets their attention more. That's the difference. That's what you're aiming for. In other words, what I'm trying to tell you is, don't just automatically do things topically because you can, because that's the easy way. Think about the information that you have to present, and think about, if you use one of these other arrangement strategies, how interesting it could make it for people. That's the key. Because I could do this topically, I could do it chronologically. Chronologically always works. It works well because that's how things happen in time in this universe anyway. But if you changed your wording to make it more interesting, to make it spatial, then do it. If it works for that information, if it works, do it, because that makes it much more interesting for the listener. How would you do order of with this? Which one's most important? Order of importance or relevance. Which one is most relevant? Which one is most important? That's really subjective. I'm going to say tasty toppings. You might say the base. You might say the base is most important. I'm going to say tasty toppings because no matter what, I want sprinkles. I love sprinkles. Sprinkles are yummy. Sprinkles are fun. I want me some sprinkles on my sundae. You might say the sauce is most important. I don't know. That's up to you. But some of you are going to say you need that chocolate sauce. I'm not a fan of chocolate sauce. I like that weird strawberry stuff. So I'm a fan of that weird strawberry stuff. Some people would say caramel. Some people would say the chocolate sauce. But this is really subjective, isn't it? It's really subjective. So does order of importance work for an ice cream sundae? I wouldn't say so. I would say no. All right, what about cause and effect? Because I would say no for order of importance. What about cause and effect here? Does choosing a particular base make you use a particular sauce? Like if you chose a particular ice cream flavor, for instance, would that mean that you would have to have chocolate sauce or caramel or strawberry sauce? I don't know what to call that stuff. What do you call that strawberry sauce? Just strawberry sauce? So for some people, that would make the difference. For some people, that would dictate what you have as a sauce. Would having a particular sauce dictate toppings for you? I don't know if it would dictate toppings for you, but you know what I want. You know I want sprinkles, no matter what. Sprinkles are yummy. Okay, so we've looked at an ice cream sundae. We've seen that this works for something simple like that. Now, if you don't know what you're talking about, let's say you're writing a college essay and you have to give a speech on something you know nothing about, or if you're even a business person or an entrepreneur and you know some of the items, that you want to talk about, but let's say there's another idea as a subtopic that you want to talk about that you know nothing about, then this part is really going to help you. Okay, this is how you use this thesis tree. Okay, so we're going to start with an idea here that I don't know much about at all. Hot air balloons. Do you know anything about hot air balloons? I imagine that there's a lot to talk about with the inventors of hot air balloons. We can guess And this is all about guessing right now. Because remember, these main points that we're coming up with right now, these main points are the research terms that we're going to plug into whatever search engine we're using, whether we're using Google or Yahoo Scholar, or we're using LexisNexis, or we're using, I don't know what you call it in other states. We have a thing in Georgia called Galileo, but it's your library system that accesses all your university and state library resources that your university system pays for in whatever state you're in. Or in whatever country you're in. So whatever you use to search, to do your research, plug these into that into those search fields for your research terms. And this is what's going to help you get the information. But what we're doing is we're guessing at these things. We're guessing at what we could talk about regarding hot air balloons. You could make an easy assumption that there would be tons of technology with hot air balloons and that you could talk about that. We know that they have some terrific art. We know there's terrific art with hot air balloons and the baskets, so we could find information on that. And we can bet that there's a better climate and condition for hot air ballooning and some unfavorable conditions for hot air ballooning. I mean, I know that just from reading the story of Richard Branson this week. I didn't know that he tried to cross the Atlantic in a hot air balloon and he almost died. I mean, read that story. It's pretty cool. If he hadn't caught the jet stream, he wouldn't have made it. But these are guesses. This is a brainstorming activity to come up with the ideas for things that we could talk about that are tangential to or subpoints of hot air balloons. But we can take this a step further. We know from the previous videos, in the previous videos I showed you that if you do some preliminary research and you found mediocre information, information on inventors, and mediocre information on historical events, that you could group those together into one solid main point. Because remember, this is all about using these terms, doing preliminary research, and then narrowing down what we're going to talk about into solid main points. And there we have a solid main point made out of those two. There's probably plenty to talk about with technology. Let's pretend we do some preliminary research and there's a ton to talk about with the balloons and baskets. But there wasn't a lot of information, even though it was there. But let's say there wasn't a lot of information on climates and conditions, so we'll cross that off. This is how you group stuff by doing preliminary research. All right, but now we're going to go even one step further. Here's the beauty. Let's say that we're doing a presentation on something we know nothing about. Okay, let's just pretend. And you'll be able to apply this even if you're an entrepreneur or a business person and you know what you're talking about already. This is still a great brainstorming tool. For college students giving a presentation on something you know nothing about, this is, to be old school about it, the bomb for you. Trust me, this is good stuff. Okay, so look right off the bat how many main points we have already from our last one, from hot air balloons, for flying cars, another flying device. Now, I don't know anything about flying cars. Do you? Do you own a flying car? If you do, hit me up in the comments and let me know all about it because I want to go for a ride. That would be cool. But think about it. Flying cars, there's got to be a lot to talk about with inventors, historical events, technology of the flying cars, and climates and conditions. Now, one thing we don't want to do is talk about how they work. How to fly a flying car, how they work. That would be a how-to speech. That would be a demonstration speech, for which I have a whole nother video because that's a whole different ball of wax. That's a whole nother ballpark. So we'll talk about that later, but don't do a how-to. But what else? Now, I want you to brainstorm. I want you to brainstorm. What else could you talk about when it comes to flying cars? Even if you don't know anything about it, what do you think there is to talk about? Are there different models and designs? Some of you might be concerned about the cost. Some of you might be concerned about the cost or the models and designs. Some of you might be worried about the safety features of flying cars. Some of you might be wondering what manufacturers actually make these. Some of you might be wondering, where can I buy one? Who are the retailers? Some of you might be wondering about limitations of flying cars, like their maximum speed, or their slowest speed, or their altitude regulations. Some of you might be wondering about licenses and permits, because you're getting ready to fly one. Some of you might be worried about the rules of the road, so to speak. So to speak. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if you're old enough to get that, tell me what it's from in the comments. Some of you might want to know about fuel efficiency. You're concerned about fuel efficiency of flying cars. That's something that we could look up and discuss. And what kind of fuel. Some of you, like me, want to know about the different features of flying cars. I think that would be cool. Some of you are concerned with the capacity. So how much can these carry? What kind of weight limit do they have? How many people can they carry? How much storage do they have? And all those sorts of questions. Just like a regular car, right? Things to think about. Flying cars correlate with regular cars and with airplanes, right? What are the different uses of these flying cars? Are they going to be used for cargo? Are they going to be used for regular residential transportation, metropolitan transportation? What kind of problems is that going to cause? That could be another main point. Some of you want to know what kind of an effect these flying cars are going to have on industry. What kind of effect are these going to have? You know, if flying cars actually take off, get the pun? If flying cars actually take off, then what kind of an effect is this going to have on the auto industry itself? Or what kind of an effect is this going to have on the airline industry? I mean, think about it. There are going to be some huge ramifications. Now remember, this whole thing is to be able to come up with main points. This whole thing is to be able to come up with research terms that you plug in. So once you start plugging these into your search engines, you know what you can build main points off of based on the information that you see just on a cursory view there. So you might find that you have limited information, but you could combine these three things that are kind of really related into one solid main point. So models and designs, manufacturers, and features could all be one solid main point that you could make based on the research that you found. And that is the beauty of this thesis tree. Now, head on over to part 4, because we're going to take all this and we're going to actually turn all this into sentences for an actual presentation. And if you like this video, please give it the thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out part 4. Part 4 is actually really short, but it shows you how we're going to go from this right here, this thesis tree brainstorming activity, to actual sentences. And this speech is going to write itself. I guarantee it.